Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, where I go through every single episode of Doctor Who from 1963 all the way to 2022 and review them. And now we are up to the Ambassadors of Death, or as I call it, the episode that introduced the electronic scream at the beginning and the end of every single Doctor Who episode. You know, that thing that's now iconic with Doctor Who theme songs. And I love that they didn't throw that sound effect on us immediately right away, that they took them a couple of episodes to bring it into Doctor Who. It sort of makes that electronic wail that much more special every time you hear it, and I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad it's such an iconic part of Doctor Who now that it's a little hard, it's kind of hard to imagine how did the theme exist without it, but its introduction into Doctor Who is so great and well done and well executed that I can look past that. I like that it exists in Doctor Who now. But moving on to the episode itself, it's another really good unit story. I think it's my least favorite of this season, but by no means, in no way, shape, or form does that mean it's not a good story. It's a really good story. And I love the premise of, like, these unnamed aliens, because we still technically don't know what their species is. They send these ambassadors to Earth, try and make peace with us and be peaceful, and as per usual, us humans mock things up, as we usually tend to do, and just kidnap those ambassadors and use them as hostages and force them to kill people on our behalf to try and get back at these unnamed aliens. Now, obviously, the main villain of this piece, General Carrington, I believe. I apologize. I forget character names very easily, so I apologize for that. But he might have some good intentions behind him. You can kind of see his motives, but at the end, it's like the usual taking the easy approach of, you know, just shooting first, asking questions never. Which, it's sad that we keep falling on this trope, but I mean, we are humans. It is kind of what we do. But anyways, so I like the idea of just keeping these aliens in these spacesuits, because it's a lot easier to make those spacesuits the villain as opposed to designing a brand new creature. And I understand we can see a little bit of those creatures to some extent all throughout the episode, but we didn't get to see too much of them, which I think was mainly done to make it easier on the prop department, so or the design or the costume department. I don't know which department was in charge of that specifically, but it was kind of to make it easier for them to not make this incredibly complicated and complex alien creature several times for the 7-part series. I mean, again, it is a 7-part series. When the John Pertwee era started, it opened with a massive bang of like 1 4-parter and 3 7-part stories. So it was a massive season in and of itself. So you can kind of see why they wanted to save a little bit of money by just having the main villain be essentially people in walking spacesuits. You know, I kind of get that. But other than that, the rest of the story I think was really good. This conspiracy is taking place between UNIT and the military, and there's some of these different moles and double agents operating everywhere. You don't know who to trust, and the episode kind of throws these curveballs at you multiple times. And I love that they connected the story with the space program, which was still going on very strongly in the 70s. Again, remember, we just landed a man on the moon. So, obviously, in hindsight, it took a while before the idea of sending manned missions to space kind of faded away and only recently came back into prominence. But yeah, back in the 70s, space was everything that people wanted to think about. It was the final frontier. It was the threshold to cross. So it makes sense why they keep making why they made all these space-themed shows. In particular, this episode. So I liked the emphasis on space here, and I love also the emphasis on radiation. Once again, the 70s, radiation is bad for you, but apparently these creatures thrive on radiation, and it really helps them. It keeps them alive, and they use radiation as a form of communication, but because they don't really necessarily know how well to communicate, it just ends up killing people. So the villains in this piece use it as a weapon. Well, one thing I will say is a bit of a nitpick for this episode is I don't like how easily the unit people get taken out. I mean, it is UNIT. It is the primary military organization of Doctor Who, and they do get their asses kicked on several occasions, but they always bounce back and come back stronger than ever. I just felt like that scene with all these different street thugs in that warehouse versus the UNIT soldiers, well, it was a really good scene. I felt like the UNIT people fell down a little too easily without taking too much out of the other people. Remember, these are trained military soldiers versus some hired guns, essentially. So they shouldn't have been taken out as easily as they have. And I like that they eventually turned the tide and got the upper hand. And the guy had the Brigadier dead to rights and chose not to shoot him because he was under orders to keep him alive. I like that, but I just didn't think, I just didn't appreciate how much the UNIT people were portrayed as pushovers early in this story. They eventually got, you know, the upper hand in other episodes of this serial, but the beginning was kind of a bit rough for them. And it's kind of before UNIT became the UNIT that we know today. So, I mean, it was still relatively early days, but, I mean, it is UNIT, so you gotta assume that they know what they're doing at some point or another. The Doctor is still a little bit sour after what happened in the previous episode with the Silurians. Clearly, you can tell that some time has passed and he's a little bit mellowed over time, but when the opportunity arises to defend Earth and help the Brigadier, he puts all that anger and frustration aside and steps up to the plate. And I really like that about how the Third Doctor recovered from what happened with the Silurians in the previous episode. Also, I really love Liz's ingenuity in this episode. It's great to see Liz driving Bessie. It's great to see that she's been chasing by these two thugs, and when they finally catch up to her, she just elbows one so hard that she throws him off the bridge. That's great, but eventually she gets captured. I don't necessarily like the idea of Liz being the damsel in distress, the princess in the tower that needs saving, but once she actually does get captured, I think she makes the best out of that bad situation by convincing that Professor Cambridge guy to escape and go find UNIT and try to explain his story. Unfortunately, to no avail by the end of it, but I just love how she, even though she's captured, she does not let these people push her around and tell her what to do, and I like that. It's a very strong part of her character that doesn't fade all throughout this serial. And speaking of other characters in Doctor Who, Benton! We get to see Benton back! I love Benton! We get more of him in the next episode, which I can't wait to talk about, but it's great to see Benton back. He's one of my favorite characters from the UNIT era, and I think one of the characters that didn't really get enough character development. I mean, case in point, he doesn't even have a first name in these stories. Like, have you ever noticed that? They never once call him by his real name, they just call him Benton, or Sergeant Benton. It's only later that he was given a proper first name, John Benton, and really that was only just because the actor's name was John. It is what it is. Some characters really got the shaft during this series, but what can you do? So yeah, and eventually I like that the Doctor, with the help of UNIT, gets the upper hand on these human characters, and they eventually get to send those ambassadors back into their spaceship to hopefully never come again, because they had such a bad experience with humans in this episode that hopefully they don't feel too sour about it and come back and try to kill people, because if they do, the Doctor's going to do what the Doctor does best, and defend the Earth. But yeah, I think I talked enough about this episode. I think I said everything I wanted to say about this episode. So yeah, can't wait to talk about the season finale of John Pertwee's first season, but that is in another review. So goodbye for now, and see ya. Hi there! Thank you for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.